Welcome back to the Big Screen Bols podcast, where you have myself, Caleb Kindle, and my podcast host, Fast Fingers himself, Christian McCrite.
Fast fingers. All right.
He could smash the B button so fast back in those old school games when you had to smash the one button like a bunch.
Right. Yes. That's me.
All the way back from Raging Blast 2
Oh yeah, dude. Raging Blast
on the
2.
PlayStation 3.
For those of you who know that's Dragon Ball Z game. I was super into that for a while.
They know it. You know it. You know it.
If you don't know it, why are you here?
You know they know it. I know that you don't know that they know that they do not know it.
I'm lost, bro. All right. So today we have a very interesting episode because instead of like ranking something, we are going to be going back to a couple of our older, more basic videos when it comes to just having a discussion.
Back to the roots of this podcast. We talk about stuff that matters.
That's right. Here's 10 reasons why you should watch this. So we're going to be discussing video game movie adaptions. So, I mean, games have been around for a long time, so have movies, and every now and then they merge together and we get movies that are adaptions from video games.
Yep. And as lately, at least within Hollywood, making it so much harder to make money in the film industry because of streaming services and everything in between, we just found that there's a lot more of them coming today than there was a couple years ago. And then I think technology is actually catching up to us as well, too.
Yeah.
Where we can show these sci-fi genres and put them on the big screen. Have us
The Big Screen Bols.
and have us idiots talk about them.
That's right.
The bowls.
The bowls. But video games have been such an important part of like my childhood. I'm sure probably yours as well. I'm going to assume so.
Nope, I don't even know what video games are.
The heck's a video game? Why are those little men walking in the TV? But I never thought that we would get to see as many video game movies as we had, particularly because even though there were some around when we were young, they're awful. They suck. Like the original like Super Mario Brothers movie, like that came out in like 2023. Yeah, it's garbage. I'm kidding. The one that came out in like the 80s or whenever, like 1983. If I'm right about that, I bet you I got that right on the money.
I thought it was in the 90s, to be honest.
Shoot, dang it.
I could be wrong too, though. We're just a bunch of idiots. We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the concept in general.
Yes.
Or I would have studied. But yeah, it's starting to happen a lot more frequently than what we thought it was. And then and just give you guys some ground rules of what we're going to talk about. It's going to have to be a video game first before we talk about it on this podcast here. So not something that was like or a book that turned into a movie that then turned into a video game. It had to be a game first and then had to adapt from there.
Yes. Correct.
So we're not going to be talking about any Madden or 2K or MLB The Show because
as much as we'd like to.
as much as we would like to, yes. All the sweaty nights in basements, seeing who can win.
That's right. Who could score 60 points as the Kansas City Chiefs against whoever. Everyone loves the Chiefs down here. So, but on to some.
And you can too if you follow the Big Screen Ball.
And if you support us, you support them. So when it comes to video game movies, because a lot of them just haven't been super successful. There have been some that have been. I mean, the Mario movie made a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh yeah.
So, and I think that's definitely like one of the earliest kind of adaptions from game to movie, obviously, because Nintendo is such a big empire, such a big company that
such an old company,
very old company, and they've had Mario for years, and they came out with the terrible one in the 80s or 90s or whenever, and then we saw basically nothing. Like we had no idea what was going to happen next, and we didn't know like if that franchise was ever going to get a movie again. And we did get one. And I think that part of it actually has to do with the success of other companies and other video game adaptions, including but not limited to sorry, I got to clear my throat today. Sonic the Hedgehog like the movie that came out just a handful of years ago, actually did fairly well. And because it's more of a family movie, you know, people tended to enjoy it. Now, is it like a great movie? No, of course it's not. But it has Jim Carrey as the Eggman, and that's pretty fun. So in some of these movies, they can pull in good cast members and make it a little bit more enjoyable. But you know, as a concept, as an idea, like it can be really difficult to pull something like that off. So the fact that they were able to do that with the Sonic movies and with Detective Pikachu, which also was a hit, and I actually enjoy that movie. And then the Mario Brothers movie. There's a Mortal Kombat movie that came out not too long ago either, a few years ago. Other than that, like those are the only like ones I can think of that actually were somewhat successful.
Yeah.
Whereas others were not.
Yeah, and I can think of a few more that were, and just to pull back a conversation as well too. Actually, Nintendo was founded in 1889. I had to make sure to check that out first,
Yeah.
but like that's like older than TVs. Video games have been longer than machines to play them on.
Yeah, which is funny to think about.
But I think one movie you missed there that I thought was a pretty good success was Uncharted.
Oh, Uncharted. I actually, full disclosure, I have not seen that movie.
It's been marketed pretty heavily on Netflix, but I was one of those movies I watched in theaters just because I'm, again, Spider-Man nut.
Spider-Man.
Wanted to.
Sorry,
That's not this
I
one.
completely
That's not this one here.
I completely threw off your game. Sorry.
But you had Mark Wahlberg and then the actor for Spider-Man as well too.
Yeah, Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, yeah, of course. And I really do like their chemistry together. I think they are going to get a second one out of the deal. With all of it being said, but that was another movie I thought that was pretty successful, and I think it was successful in the box office as well too.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, it's just another like a Sony movie, and we're really starting to see. I think that's a big thing I want to touch on in this podcast at some point, but I think we'll get into it deeper when we really go through a lot of the TV series adaptions.
Mhm.
That's where I think Sony's attacking it the most. But Sony's having a really successful film career early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
With everything that they've done so far. So
yeah, I agree. And they have so many projects. They have so many things in their repertoire. I want to say repertoire. I think that's right.
Not even just that, but in the pipeline still today to come out with. Like,
yeah, they have like a Metal Gear stuff coming out.
Yep.
Everyone loves Metal Gear.
I think God of War coming out too.
Yeah. That was really guttural. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Boy. That was really good, actually. Shoot, sign me up, Sony. I'll do it. And God of War 3, I'll do it.
Just Christian's bald for the next podcast. Just
got a big old beard and on the markings and everything. No, but with the success that games are having, because as time goes along, both movies and games see a huge rise in popularity.
Yep.
Of course, games were popular back when they were first around, and so were films. But just like being so ingrained in like pop culture, like to see them kind of mesh and interlock in and out is something I never thought would be not possible, but I never thought would happen in my lifetime. And here we are with so much stuff to be able to talk about.
because I'll be honest as well too. Just even like go against that point, I thought it would happen a lot more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because like again, I thought that was low hanging fruit.
Money.
Yeah, money. Exactly. Just like I can't like we'll talk about it when we get again deeper into the TV series, but like Halo. Everybody really wanted the Halo TV show to be really good just because Halo's such a popular game.
Yep.
And it just wasn't. And it was super disappointing. But at the same time, I guess I could also see what if that affects your game franchise future
Yeah.
of having a crappy TV show written about it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think
a really
that's
good point.
a big piece is just like, are you willing to risk your reputation for money?
Yeah, that's a good.
But I think that's kind of been less of a deal since reputation doesn't really matter, I think, as today in culture.
Mhm.
But yeah, why would you risk ruining your reputation just for something that probably won't make you a lot of money?
Right. That's a good question because there's a lot of them that just bomb.
Yep.
Like not only like box office, but honestly, a TV series is actually more risky than a movie. Because with a movie, you get butts in the theater seat, and that's money in the theater's pocket and the company's
Yep.
pocket. But with TV series, you're not really looking for people to start spending money unless they're renting it. You're more looking for people to subscribe to a service or some sort of channel to be able to provide that. And
But
that can
we're talking $10 a month compared to $10 for one night.
true, but I think that like for $10 a month, like if someone said, "Oh, well, I have these streaming services, but I don't have this one, which is the only one that this one comes out on," they could buy a subscription and then cancel it, or they may just say altogether that it's not worth it to buy, to buy that just to
Yep.
one time screen. So they may see it try to come out on some sort of DVD or whatever if people still use those. And so it's tough, especially with a TV series, even though some of the more successful ones have actually been TV series
Yeah.
as of late.
I think it's you're literally gonna get a hit or a miss when it comes to TV series. I think the most successful ones we've seen out there have been TV series, and the least successful ones have been TV series. So it's gonna be
Yeah.
kind of crazy how all this pans out. And I think again, it's gonna matter about your writing style.
Mm-hmm.
If you can find the good writers, and make sure that your game reputation or your game's characters can flow into the big screen at that point, that's where you're really going to look to find your money at. And I think Sony games are really, really good with this just because of how enriching their stories are.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe that's where Halo kind of fell off a little bit. Like Halo's not really meant to be a movie.
No.
Like it's meant to be a buddy first person shooter. Like there's a reason there's not as much dialogue in it because Master Chief or the Doom as well too. Like those are two characters that are heavily based upon their actions.
Yeah.
Compared to basing themselves off of a story, an in-depth
Right.
story, or a tragic loss in life, or whatever else.
Right.
And again, it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be a bunch of guys are sitting in a basement, shooting each other, shooting their buddies,
duking it out, basically. Because I think that a lot of video games now, I know it's a little bit different nowadays because the creativity and the technology have gotten so insane. But for the most part, most games are just entertainment.
Yep.
Like you are there to sit down and have fun with either yourself or your friends. And as you said, go down in the basement and shoot each other's characters or avatars or whatnot. And it's hard to translate that to screen, especially when the concept of all these video games revolves around either ideas that are way too simple that they can't really have a story, or things that are so broad in nature or so freelance-ish, like something like Skyrim. Like, could you imagine if they made a Skyrim movie? Like, they have a central storyline, but that central storyline would never ever capture what Skyrim does. Because Skyrim is based on, you have a main quest, but the fun part is everything else around it.
Yep.
Everything else around the main story.
You get to live your life within the character.
Yeah. Who plays Skyrim to play the main story all the time? Like, oh, I can't wait to play the main quest. No one says that. Everyone says, oh, I can't wait to do this side quest and this side quest and to do these funny bugs and glitches and things like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what they're there for. So it's hard to adapt a video game into that sort of way.
And that's what I was even kind of thinking. It was kind of hard as well too, to how D&D was able to pull off a good movie with it being that same exact concept.
Yeah.
I would call it very similar to Skyrim within it's based upon user input compared to and user attachment compared to a good story being pushed into it from there. So,
right.
But we even see that with you mentioned before, Vox Machina, also being a very popular TV show. I know, and again, this is getting off our main topic of video games being readapted into films or series, but
It's still a game.
I think this is it's a game. Yeah, that is good. It's still a game at the end of the day. So it's weird how that's able to connect, and I think that's what it would come down to, especially with Skyrim, is how creative a storyline can we really make for this?
Yeah,
and go from there.
Right, because in Skyrim, like your main character has like no character. You are kind of just like this block that you can kind of customize a little bit that just does things.
Yep.
and the story unfolds because of that. But for things like the Mario movie, that's why the Mario movie can be a little bit tough, because on a lot of the Mario games, they're not really centered around some epic scale emotional story. It's mostly just the gameplay, and it's just a little bit of family fun.
Yeah.
And so things like Vox Machina is different because D&D is a game that's centered around the concept, the idea of you have a dungeon master and your players. Your players make the characters, your DM makes the world, and the characters, who are the center of the story, create the story. So with that, you have a direction and you're character focused. Whereas things like Halo, like everyone loves like Master Chief, but let's be honest, like he's not that deep of a character. I know that may be a hot take. Like he has some things in his past and he has flashbacks and whatnot. But when I think of deep emotional, like video game characters, that it's like this is a guy that, you know, I know all this about and would stand behind it, whatever. I don't think of Master Chief. I just think of Master Chief as he is just the lens through we see down the barrel of a gun. And that sounds kind of bad because there are some Halo games that do have good stories like Halo Reach and things like that. But at the end of the day, movies are about storytelling and characters.
Yep.
And creating memories using those two concepts. And for video games, that can be extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Especially for a movie.
And I will say that I think that it kind of was a hot take too, just on that idea of Master Chief. I think he is a deep character in my mind, but he's a deep character that doesn't say a lot.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to say a lot. That's just his character type. It's
Yeah.
why would I ever talk and express emotion or do all this when
Sure.
I can make my gun say it for me?
He's more of a show don't tell.
Exactly.
Kind of guy.
And that's
you know,
that's hard to
that's-
build a TV show or build a movie around that.
Exactly.
Because then you have a lot of people that have different expectations for what he would sound like and what he would do in situations. And when you try to give him a bunch of dialogue that doesn't make sense,
Right.
that is where like the Halo movie kind of fell
Exactly.
on its face. And then if you don't want to make him talk, then you put it into other side characters that don't matter and we don't want to hear from. And then you try to make it about them.
Right.
And you fill it with kind of even bad actors as well too.
Yeah.
That aren't able to redo what you're trying to do there. But I think that's what it's all going to come down to is great story writing. And that's what I think Sony's, I hate to say this, and again, it's going to sound like, because I've said a lot of bad things about Sony, but the past 3 or 4 podcasts, I've said nothing but good things, but they've really done a great job of prioritizing great storytelling. Let's keep politics out of a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, there's so many polarizing different ticks within things.
Yes.
That you could have something super, super small that will just set off everybody to not want to watch that movie, watch that TV
on
show.
whoever's side.
And again, you need views. Views is money at the end of the day. So you can't turn away views at whatever the cost is.
Yeah.
And again, I'd hate to make it sound like we're selling our souls to be able to make a quick buck, but that's life. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Like that's business. These people are running businesses.
Yeah.
If I was running a business, again, some things are going to have to be culled away to be able to be the best you can be within that space.
Yeah. They're going to do, or at least they should do. They should try the best they can because we invest our money in them.
Yep.
It's supposed to be a two-way street. It's a trade-off. Without the audience, you know, movies and games are irrelevant. And, you know, otherwise we'd have to find other forms of entertainment. So, and I do agree. I think Sony has done a good job, and I think they have a lot of things in the pipeline that they're like, okay, this is what we can do, and we're going to take this much amount of time to do it. And I think that's good. And I think it's definitely good to kind of keep politics out of that sort of thing, because that way you can get the most broad audience you can. The best way to not alienate an audience is to, well, not alienate them.
Yeah.
You know, try to make it in a frame that works for everybody. So, because most video games are that way.
Yeah.
You know, there are some controversial things, like people had controversial opinions about Hogwarts Legacy. And it's really sad that we've come to a point where things like I don't want to say mindless, entertainment is shoved to their knees to the criticism of the rest of us, and we divide ourselves over things that really aren't that important.
Yeah.
Like games are fun, movies are fun, and we love them. And movies have been really important to my life, but it's not worth like alienating friends and family over.
Oh yeah, or just all the hate that you could give as well too. It's like even if you don't agree with something, completely being completely transparent here, there's no reason you should go on and destroy somebody's reputation or I don't
Yeah.
know, just spew a bunch of hate on social media, whatever else. Like
Yeah.
that's not going to help anything in that situation. But
And games can be notorious for this because they will show a character who goes in a direction that people may not think is okay with their view, and they'll just, I mean, they will bomb that thing, they will trash that thing. And I think it's just best if we all just kind of step back and let it be what it is, because and I think that game companies need to realize that, it needs to be about us and not about certain groups of people.
yeah, but in the same way too, you do have to understand we got to make this pleasing and understandable for a lot of groups as well too.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
again, whatever I say, like don't spew hate on social media and all that. Like that's great, but at the same time, like it's up to you, media, to make content that we want to enjoy.
yeah, exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. And then again, if it's media that you want to produce that's only going to go to a certain demographic of people, hopefully that demographic of people will be willing to pay an extremely wealthy amount of
Right.
much more or be able to consume that in a lot higher process than what.
Right. And if you're going to make changes to characters, if you're going to push things in certain directions, do it in a way that makes sense with the story. Do it in a way that makes sense with engaging the audience. HBO's The Last of Us is a great example of this.
I think that's a beautiful
It is
example.
a video game. It was a video game first that got adapted into a TV series. And we've already talked about it. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check that out.
Yeah.
But we, I watched all those episodes in a row, basically. And one of them is centered around two characters, two guys that are not even hardly in the game, like at all. They get a whole big episode dedicated to them.
Yeah.
But it kind of served the world building. And there was a great story kind of written around it, and it did make its place in the series. So when you do stuff like that, that's what makes it good. And that's why like The Last of Us is a good example of a good video game adaptation, is because the game is centered around characters. And once those games are centered around your characters, then you have a lot more ground to work with when it comes to adapting those.
Yeah. Especially if the characters are pretty deep already in nature.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm glad we're getting into the TV series because I think that's a really good one. Yeah, The Last of Us was an absolutely fabulous show.
It's a great show.
Again, I'm really excited to see what Sony's going to push out next for TV series, at least. I think another one I think we really need to cover is The Witcher.
Yeah.
Witcher was really, really great within the first season. I think with a couple of the last seasons, it's not as great as what it has been beforehand. And I think a lot of that has to go into what we've talked about beforehand, writers that want to go away from what the concept of the
Yes.
game was meant to be.
And that's why Henry Cavill left, isn't it?
Exactly. It's
Because
just
creative differences with
creative
how they were
difference with
going to do the
everybody.
game.
Yeah.
And he's going to be at the helm for a Warhammer 40K show. And I'm pretty excited for that.
I'm really excited for that. Yeah.
Because he's very passionate about it. And that's something that has to be important to writers and directors for these types of video game adaptations. Being passionate about the project, it shows.
Yep.
Because there are some people who are, as you say, out there to make a quick buck, low hanging fruit. But some of them, like the ones for The Last of Us, they are out there to retell this story as accurately as they can, but also in a way that is different enough to make it unique.
Yep. But
And it works in its favor.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point to make. Like I felt like that was The Last of Us. It wasn't to make money off of. It was
Yeah.
how can I tell this story to a group of people that have never seen The Last of Us and will never play video games just because that's not their style. That's not them.
I've played pieces of the first game and that's it.
Yeah.
I didn't even, I was probably not even halfway through the first game, didn't even play any of the part 2, and I loved the show.
Yeah.
And it made me want to go back and play the game. And I think that's a very strong strategy where you can make a great game, make a great movie or series that will make you want to go back and forth between the two. It should be a synonymous relationship.
And it's a great business decision as well too, because you have
Yeah.
this hog Microsoft that's out there rooting around.
Swine. This pig.
not to make it sound like I'm saying like a big
Yeah, I'm just
big
messing
hefty
with it.
boy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like,
like that one pig off of Family Guy.
oh
It's
yeah,
like it's like oink.
that's got the knuckles. Yeah,
He's got
his
the
fists,
muscles. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the third largest company in the world at that point. And again, what's it doing? It goes and buys Bethesda. It goes and buys all these different types of game workshops where it's like, guess who's going to win the game war now? PlayStation. And it's like PlayStation's like, okay, so if we can't play these games anymore, if they become Xbox exclusive games, we really need to find another avenue for revenue or just find something else to get into because we could possibly lose our main business model
Yeah. And I mean,
due to competition.
yeah. And I mean, like, anytime you're doing something like that, especially like adapting and things like that, you're taking a risk.
A huge risk, yeah.
Like a Mario, like the new Mario movie took a huge risk. If it would have bombed, look, first of all, that movie was like, as a box office hit, was super successful.
Yep.
I mean, unbelievably successful. It's still being played in theaters. I looked on my phone the other day when I was looking at a movie to go see down here. Still playing. Still has 3 showings a day for now. I don't know how long it'll last. It's still showing. In what, that came out in April?
Yeah.
And it's almost July?
But
So-
I still think that it's a heavy win or a super heavy loss. But I think even almost a heavier win because guess how many people or kids watch that movie that never played Mario before? I want to get that game. I want to get that game.
Yeah.
I want to get that game. And guess what mom and dad do?
They get
All
the
right,
game.
we'll buy you a new Switch.
Yeah. And it just, and then it gets further on. Then all of a sudden they tease for a sequel, which means there's another opportunity to do the same thing. And then they're actually talking about, they're trying to acquire the rights, or not the rights, trying to see if it's possible to make a Legend of Zelda movie.
I know, yeah.
That's being talked about. So because of the success of this movie, now I'm sure they'll kind of go with like more of like a Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom sort of,
Of course.
because of its popularity, of course, which I don't mind. But we could potentially see something like a smash 'em up hitter game like Super Smash Bros. We could potentially see that become a film, which is strange to think about because only one of them has a real story that I know of, I guess. So it's just it's a good strategy as long as you're careful when you do it right. 'Cause
Yeah, if you can write good movies,
yeah, just write well.
yeah. And again, that's a that's $1 million question. It's like telling like a salesperson, like, be the best salesman in the world.
Yeah, it's just do your job, man. Like you've taken this dream away from hundreds upon thousands of people, including me included, who's always wanted to be a director and a filmmaker. So if you're going to have that job, treat it well, treat it carefully.
Yeah.
Do what you can to make the best content that you can, because you are in a position that is being envied by hundreds upon thousands of people for probably a couple of generations. And you should recognize that and be like, I am in a position where I can have at least some small part of creative control over this process. And I think that's a beautiful thing, but also it should be a very cautious thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you're adapting video games into movies, because you're dabbling into 2 separate kinds of business. So with stuff like that, just be very meticulous. That's a good word.
Yeah, and I'm going to come from this as a stance of empathy as well, but I know they're going to try their best. I know that they're top of their class. I know that they're some of the best around, but it always will come down to, was that the right call in the situation?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll have a great idea that I think is a great idea, and everybody else thinks it's an awful idea. And sometimes I'll have bad ideas that end up becoming great ideas. So I think that's the $1 million question, is what is good and what is not good. And then when you get 5 hours or 6 hours of filming done, or a
Right.
movie to show, how do we cut 4 hours of that off to make it a movie?
Yeah.
Because that's what it ends up coming down to. And that's right. I think that really hurt Justice League so much was that, okay, now we're having to display all these people on one movie. Let's cut this thing up as much as we can to actually keep people's attention to watch this thing.
Right.
We do that. We're already in a rush to get this thing out in the theaters. It gets out there and just
Bombs.
doesn't do well. Like,
And it's even worse for games because games are predicated on hours upon hours of gameplay that nearly vary from person to person.
yep.
And because of that, like, you can make a 4-hour cut of Justice League or whatever. But, there's also these people who play like God of War and spend, 40 plus hours playing this game. Like, how do you condense that into a movie? How do you even go about that? And because in games, there's so much more, there's many more broad things to do. And having to cut that down and pick out the important things, I'm sure is a extremely tough process.
Oh, yeah.
A super daunting process. If someone came up to me and said, "Hey, make a Legend of Zelda film," I'd be like, "What?
Yeah.
How? Like, how would I do that? Like, I could do that with some things, but it would be hard." So that's why it needs to be treated so carefully.
Yeah.
And as he said, I bet you those who are making it, you're doing the best you can, and I understand that. But it's just one of those things where, like, if the Super Mario film that came out this year would have bombed, it would have been another 40 years before we would have ever had enough faith rebuilt for you to make another one.
And even then, too, what's that going to, if it was bad, what's that going to do to the game's reputation? Are people going to play that anymore?
Yeah.
Did people stop playing Halo because the Halo TV show was bad? I
No.
guarantee it. I'd bet money on it. I bet if you would look at where Halo Infinite's plays were at and that movie and that TV show came out and where the plays
Yeah.
went right after that.
I mean, you're adding it to your brand because once you're adding it to the brand, you're saying like, Halo is Bungie,
No,
not Bungie,
343.
343. I don't know game companies. And
Well, again, that's the biggest controversy within the whole entire franchise was Bungie knew what the core of the game was and it built that.
Mhm.
And then they had to get rid of it or sell it off
Yeah.
to a Microsoft-based company. And then,
But like you're putting it under the brand of like whenever you think of Halo, Halo has these things in it, and that comes with the good and the bad, and you can't get rid of one or the other. Like it comes with all of it.
Yeah.
So the more bad you add to it, like the more that scale tips in the opposite direction, which is why I think once again, you got to be real careful with what you do and how you do it.
Yep.
And that comes with not just movies and films, but also games.
Yeah.
When you spend so much money and people get paid bukus of money to come and make your game for you, and then all of a sudden it bombs, probably doesn't feel great.
yeah, for sure. But to kind of wrap this up, again, this is all I've ever wanted as a kid, at least when I was a little kid, just to see like I could play a video game and it could come to life to me and just give me more content, more creation with it. Like,
More.
yeah, exactly. And it's like I was a real imaginative kid as well too. Like we were the kids that were running around playing whatever
Oh,
weird stuff
gosh.
during recess,
Yeah.
and just like imagination things and stuff, and
We
just
should-
being able to have something more to fuel that imagination for the kids that are out there, and even for myself today.
Mhm.
That's what I've wanted as a kid and stuff like that. Like nothing sucks more to play a game and then it ends and you're really ready for the next, like,
Yeah.
you want to get back into it or you want to do the next piece of it there. So
Mhm.
that's what I think these are going to do really great with is it's going to tell it from a different lens and probably even just like reading a book and watching a movie as well too.
Yeah.
You'll just see a whole different perspective of it. But
Yeah.
movies that I'm excited for or TV series I would be excited for if they
Mm-hmm.
kind of hit the big screen for me to review and go through. I think Gears of War would be a fun one.
That'd be cool.
I think, again, these characters were, again, more of that action-y type, but I think they have enough dialogue and they have enough reasoning that I think there's enough to make a TV series or probably more maybe a movie around it
Mhm.
just to show some more of it.
Yeah.
that, again, I'm really excited for the Warhammer show that comes out. I know Henry Cavill is in love with Warhammer. I love Warhammer as well too. And I'm really excited for people that are really excited to make movies about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I think the last thing I'd be super excited for, and this is, we talked about it already, but if we could ever have a Smash Brothers Avengers style
Oh
movie,
my gosh, that'd be so cool.
again, that's just,
That'd be a dream come true.
yeah. And
is
even
what
if
it'd be.
like they could just steal the Avengers like song, like,
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
yes. We'll pay you several millions of dollars just to play that.
Just to
in the
play that
theater.
one song. Worth it, dude. Totally
Worth
worth it. I think if I was excited for some, I think Detective Pikachu was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I think they should, like, I'd be fine with the sequel, but I think they should do a movie like for actual like Pokemon. Like there are bits and pieces in the movie where you can kind of see elements of like the original games. I want to see them actually expand on that and do an actual Pokemon movie. So, because I think that would make them bukus of money, whether it was good or not.
Ash Ketchum is Tom Holland.
Tom Holland plays every young character from every video game. So I'd like to see that. I'm excited for Metal Gear. I thought that'd be pretty cool too. And yeah, I'm excited to see the Warhammer 40K.
Yeah.
But for those of you, for you parents out there who don't really play games, this is a good way for you to also connect with your kids and to make conversation about games they may play.
Yeah.
That you were able to watch a movie or TV show over and have a conversation with them about it.
Yeah.
That's good. It's good conversation starter. Someone randomly says, "Oh well, I was playing the God of War game," and all of a sudden someone's like, "God of War, like I love that show that's not announced or anything."
Yeah.
It would just be really good it would help bridge that gap.
Yeah.
So
All right. Well, yeah, other than that, again, this is a little bit of a different thought through or kind of run through than what we normally go and do. So, again, let us know what you think. If you want to see us do more of these deep dives and really just think about where the future of filmmaking is going and everything, we'd love to know. We'd love to get your feedback and do the same thing we hope that movies are doing, is getting feedback back and trying to make better content at the end of the day. So,
yeah.
But if you haven't yet, like, subscribe, share with friends, neighbors. If you go to other countries, tell them about it. Vacation season's here. It's summertime.
That's right.
Summer 2023. Big Screen Bols out.